Once again, welcome to the program. I'm Araba Kumsin. The governing NDC and the opposition NPP have come up tops in a survey in which many Ghanaians thought that they were most guilty amongst all the political parties in the country when it comes to the issue of vote buying. Vote buying, as the name suggests, is the situation where parties and candidates distribute material benefits to individual citizens in exchange for votes. Now, the survey was conducted by governance think tank Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, on the environment prevailing in Ghana ahead of the 2016 polls.
We wanted to find out what Ghanaians thought about those things that would make the election a good one. So again, majorities expect that the following aspects of the 2016 election to be free and fair, though in all cases, over a tenth to nearly 1/5 are pessimistic. So again, we think that peace and security for all citizens is key, resolution of post-election disputes, the counting and reporting of results, because again, we are discussing electronic transmission of results and that sort of thing. So that is important for Ghanaians in thinking that would help the quality of elections. The availability of information on all candidates and parties. Again, that goes to the media. You've got to be fair in the coverage you give to all political parties. Equal treatment of all candidates by the media, and equal access to resources by all candidates and parties. The current news is on abuse of incumbency, so I'm sure you understand what that means. But this is a true reflection of what Ghanaians think would help improve the quality of our elections. So what is the perceived neutrality of the Electoral Commission? Because that is the referee of the match. So how do Ghanaians think, what they think about the EC? So again, a clear majority of Ghanaians believe the EC performs its duties as a neutral body guided by law. However, a third think the EC takes decisions meant to favor particular people or parties of interest. So who are the culprits of vote buying in Ghana? Again, this runs parallel to, the violence, the kind of results we saw when it got to vote coercion. So the two front runners, the NDC and then the NPP, are the most cited parties that sell their votes.
So that's the program officer of the Center for Democratic Development Ghana, giving some details of that survey there. We can get some more details from my colleague Raymond Akwa, who was at that CDD program and joins me in the studio. Now, Raymond, not very surprising that the NDC and the NPP came up tops in this particular survey, considering that they're the two largest parties and would have more resources to distribute. But tell us, what are the specifics of this survey?
Okay, so 51% actually were those who believed that the NDC was influencing people with vote buying. The other section was 32% for the NPP. The rest of the political parties were, none got even up to 1%. It shows that in terms of cleanness in even conducting elections, they are better than the big wigs in the election. What that point was to make was that even though people in the part of the survey are saying that they are more vote buying and they are not willing to sell their vote, some 25% of that same population said that at some point in time, vote buying, which is illegal and frowned upon by the laws, is not the same as vote selling. So even though they say that vote buying is bad, vote selling should not be deemed as an illegal activity.
What's the difference between the two, vote buying and vote selling?
They believe that it means the responsibility on the politician buying the vote should be deemed more important than the person receiving the kind of largesse. So the question was also asked, what are they receiving? They said money was number one. Second was also to do with food. And three, other items like clothing also comes in third. So these are the big issues that's actually influencing votes on the grounds. They also moved on to say that all of these likely affects their votes. So a huge number, 60% said, even though they may take something from the people who are offering them these things, it is less likely to affect their votes. Another 54% said they know somebody who took something from somebody before voting for that particular person. And some of them are also saying that the amount of money and the kind of food and other things they receive do not really affect their votes.
I see. Interesting. But we can get some more details from the CDD's Kofi Asante. He's throwing more light on the survey.
It's not just the NDC, as the charts show. It's the two leading parties. As you can see, the other parties almost don't even record any numbers. And that is reflective of the two dominant parties who have been in power over the number of years. But basically, it's just to track the incidence of vote buying. You know, we talk about it all the time anecdotally. We say, yeah, parties, buy votes and so on. We want to see what is the incidence. Have people actually been offered money? What do they perceive about the political parties buying votes? And large majority says, yeah, they believe the parties buy votes. But they also say that some of them are prepared to sell their votes as well. So for me, it is not just a question about the parties, which I think is a problem for democracy, for our democracy, but it's also a problem for the public. What is your actual experience of vote buying? Okay. But that's a question of evaluation, but there's also a question about what do you perceive to be the truth. You know, do you think parties engage in vote buying? Majority say yes, we believe. Then you track also actual incidents. Okay. Have you experienced? Do you think your neighbors have experienced? Do you think your neighbors will take money and vote a certain way? So we track both the opinions, their perceptions, but also what they evaluate, what they think they've experienced.
So that's a senior program officer at CDD Ghana, Kojo Asante there. Now, we understand that the survey also showed that a lot of Ghanaians who were interviewed did not trust that the EC would announce the correct ballot on election day after the results are announced. But what is actually what's the case? Why is it that they don't trust the EC to announce the correct ballot? The sequence of questions
starts with the question on the neutrality of the EC, and 63% said they were convinced that the Electoral Commission was neutral and would carry out its mandate according to the laws. They moved on to say that they were also convinced that the elections need to be free and fair, and that's like 73% of the population. And they proceeded to say that they are convinced that the EC will conduct the elections in a free and fair manner. But on the specific issue to do with the votes, the 50% who said that they are not so convinced that the actual vote cast will be declared.
On what basis did they say that? Did the survey indicate?
No, the survey did not indicate that. But the exploration of that particular issue came to the point that when majority of these people take their information from the radio stations and private media actually led the source of information for these people, the EC has been in the news for a very long time now. So on one hand, whilst there's a lot of talk about the integrity of the EC, there's also so much talk about what will happen to the elections, mindful of what has happened in previous elections. So this might have fed into the conception that they're not likely to get what they want in this election. All
right, thank you very much. And that is Raymond Agbo, my colleague there. Now, speaking of the December polls, let's head to the Western region, where the NDC flag bearer, President John Mahama, has been earnestly campaigning. He's been traveling the length and breadth of that region, and he's been highlighting some projects executed by the government in the hopes that the electorate would vote massively for the NDC to enable them continue to transform the country. One of the major highlights of his visit to that region is the commissioning of the FPSO at a mill to commence production of oil from the 10 fields. Earlier today, President Mahama turned on the production valve on the FPSO.
Oil production from the 10 fields starts today. It's the second biggest oil find in the country so far. And as production starts, residents of Takoradi have been wondering if this will have an impact in their lives. Joining me here today are two residents of Takoradi to find out more about what they think the impact will be. What do you think about it?
Yeah, from what I've observed over the past 5 years, it has really increased the cost of rental housing. There are situations that people have to lose their supplements and afford because the local was money in the system. They have to post that. It is easy because if you go to the hinterland where you have large package plants are being acquired by oil companies from their warehouse. So in this case, people don't get that
seen some improvement in the roads within the Takoradi.
So that's my colleague Kweku Owusu-Pepra there, speaking to some people ahead of today's commissioning of the FPSO at Mills. Well, that's just one of the several activities lined up in the president's itinerary. Joy News' Kweku Owusu-Pepra is following that for us, and he joins me on the line. What has been the reaction, Kweku, of residents in the oil city to this morning's event? Are people excited and expectant, as we saw some few years ago when first oil was being poured by President Mills?
No, not at all. People are still about their duties normally, and ordinarily, in 5 years ago when there was first oil for Jubilee, the whole city turned upside down. Everybody was excited. There were jubilations all over town. But now it's just another drop in the ocean. It doesn't really mean any much for the people. But they have been saying that, you see, yes, there was first oil 5 years ago, and I didn't get a job. So why would I get a job in the new biggest fine? There was first oil 5 years ago. My rent went up, and I was ejected. But there have been many banks that have come into Takoradi because of the first oil 5 years ago. There have been roads that have been constructed within the Takoradi township because of oil. But for them, real impact could be for many people, young people, to get real jobs in the industry. With the recent slump in the oil prices, many have lost jobs. Especially people who lived in Takoradi, who had some catering jobs to do, went onto the FPSO to do some rustabout works or mud pushing or pipe cleaning. Many of them have been asked to come back home. So hopefully, with the steady rise in the oil prices and with this new addition to the field, people are expecting that, yes, maybe the numbers will increase and they'll be asked to come back to their jobs.
Interesting, Kweku. Now, we know the president continues his regional campaign tour today. Where else will he be visiting?
So the president is now at Kokompe, and Kokompe is a light industrial area for where we all go to make our cars look finer. If your ball joint is not working well, you go to Kokompe. So it's a mechanic area. The president is going there to interact with these artisans who work there, to understand their pain, to understand their successes, and also to affiliate with them more and ask them to vote for him in the 2016 election. From Kokompe, the president will go to the Sekendi Songo, where he would meet with the residents of that area and interact with them again and beg for them to vote for him in the 2016 elections and the prayers of the Muslim community ahead of the election.
Thank you very much. And that is our Western Regional Correspondent, Kweku Owusu-Pepra there. Now, speaking of President Mahama's wife, Lordina, has been thrown in the spotlight after the New Patriotic Party accused her of going on a gift-sharing expedition. You recall the Acting General Secretary of the party, John Bwedu, at a news conference Wednesday, raised concerns about what he described as the lavish gifts being shared by Mrs. Mahama across the country.
Lordina Mahama and her gifts. The president was silent on why babies are dying in our hospitals because there are no more incubators or oxygen. The president did not explain why students in boarding schools are left to starve, whilst his wife, the First Lady, can find money to travel across the country giving away election year goodies. Let's be clear, the MPP is all for charity work, but we also have the right to question the timing of escalation of the First Lady's gift-sharing expedition and the volume and cost of the gifts being shared. And this
So that is John Bwedu, who is acting General Secretary of the NPP, and the party is expressing apprehension on the timing of what they say is the escalation of the First Lady's gift sharing expedition and the volume and cost of the gifts being shared. But of course, that has been dismissed by the NDC, which says the NPP is only engaging in partisan propaganda, and they point to the wife of Nane Akufo-Addo, who's been visiting hospitals and marketplaces and distributing items to people there as well. So is it a gift sharing expedition, or is it mere charity work, or really a calculated plan to buy votes? Let's get some perspective from head of our political desk here at Joy News, Evans Mensah. Hi, Evans.
Hello, Araba.
So how would you describe what these ladies are doing in the light of all the accusations that have come up?
Well, for Lordina Mahama, there are questions about whether this is abuse of incumbency or not, because she's a first lady, married to the most powerful person of the land, who, of course, is, according to our constitution, supervises all disbursements when it comes to our resources. Of course, Parliament approves it, but we're an executive government. The question to ask is whether the resources she's using to purchase these items that she's allegedly distributing are resources that come from her own coffers, or resources coming from the state coffers, i.e. resources that we, myself and you, are contributing through our taxes. If it's from her own resources, parties raise, you can doubt that Lordina Mahama, knowing who she is, can raise her own resources to back the presidential ambition of the husband, John Mahama. If we can establish that, if it is coming from state resources, so it's clearly a case of abuse of incumbency, as we've seen in the Arbor Motors distributions that was once called a donation, but subsequently was described as a government intervention. In this case, that needs to be established. We haven't heard yet any clear I guess, point from Lordina Mahama's side of the NDC side, telling us where the source of funding is for these items. So for me, that will make a huge difference where you place this. But in the absence of that answer, though, it's good to ask questions about what this amounts to, even if it's coming from our own personal coffers. The question about the motive behind the distribution of these items. I mean, you have 3 months on election, or almost 4 months on election. Why would you be distributing the items at this time if it's not to sort of influence people to vote for you in a certain way? I mean, so it can't. But we must say, though, it's been part of our political history. All the parties do that. All the parties, the wives of the candidates who have the means, try to do that. We've seen pictures of Nana Akufo-Addo's wife also distributing bags of whatever it is. It's to the same end, which is that, and the bags are branded in party colors.
But Evans, is it realistic to say that within the Ghanaian context that one can conduct a campaign without resorting to, distributing items to people whose votes they require or desire?
Well, in a Ghanaian context, I guess we've accepted to lower the bar so low. I think, and that is why in this year's election you've heard a lot about issues, and we've been at the forefront of that, pushing that issues to be an issue. If issues dominate the campaigns, we are way off from that. It's probably going to take another 20 years for us to get there. But if issues dominate the campaigns, then people will see this as totally abhorrent. If the people accept it, and the politicians get a sense that the people want this, and they will vote based on these items, then they will give it to them. I mean, politics, they say we get the politicians we deserve. If the majority of us want to get 50 cedis, 20 cedis, get a bowl, a sewing machine, bag of rice to vote for a person, the politicians will definitely bring you that, because that's what will get their votes. And so I guess we need to start from the grassroots, the voters. They must lead this campaign to rid our politics of such things.
All right, thank you very much. That's head of our political desk here at Joy News, Evans Mensah there. You're watching Election Brief. Now, in Ghana's political history under the Fourth Republic, multi-party democratic elections require that political parties couch or develop a campaign strategy, usually interspersed with profound campaign slogans. These slogans usually underscore a key message the party seeks to tell electorates in order to be given the mandate. The NPP in the year 2000 elections campaigned on the positive change and used a very popular slogan, Aseho, in the Akan language, meaning down there. Then again, in the 2012 elections, the NDC's campaign team, Better Ghana, was supported by a campaign slogan in Pidgin English, Idebi Keke. Well, to explore this, I have here in the studio with me Dr. Eche Sikanko. He's a lecturer at the University of Ghana's Communications Department, University of Ghana Communications Department. I beg your pardon for that tongue tie. So, welcome to the program, Dr. Sikanko.
Thank you.
In electioneering programs, how effective is slogans like the NPP's Aseho and the NDC's Idebi Keke in courting, the electorate?
They are both important because at the end of the day, voters have to remember the message that the parties are trying to send out to them. Don't forget that a party can have resources, it can have a good strategy, but without a good message, they aren't going to convince anybody. And moreover, elections are a persuasive event. You have to persuade people to vote for you. And messages or communication, words, language are one of the means where the candidates communicate or persuade people. Now, the slogans come in because the slogans have to necessarily come out of a message. You're going to have a manifesto, you're going to have adverts, you're going to have so many messages going on in the campaign. People cannot remember everything. And so most of the time, you do need a message. You do need a slogan to make it more memorable.
And speaking of slogans, what we've been hearing in recent times is the Mahama administration campaign, the NDC campaign, JM Twaso, literally meaning that JM continue. How effective do you think this will be?
Well, at the end of the day, the purpose for this particular slogan is, so that means continuity. They want him to continue. And most of the time, it's very characteristic of incumbent administrations. And so the opposition or those out of power would probably have a theme of change. The incumbent would make an argument that we got to continue what we are doing in order to continue with the foundation that we've laid. So yes, it is not surprising. It would rather be very surprised if they did not do that. But then again, it depends, what the argument is, because incumbent governments can lose power if they are made unpopular and if their message of development does not go down well with the people. And so, yes, there's a slogan of continue to us. So, but at the end of the day, what are they going to continue for? You see, so that becomes where the debate and where the argument happens. But it's the first start, and I do have, if you evaluate it according to the effectiveness of it, I think it's fairly effective, because one of the things that you have to do is to make sure that your campaign is memorable, is simple, is catchy, and it's punchy. And Twaso is just one word.
Yeah.
Right?
Very easy to remember.
Yes.
But speaking of slogans, the NPP is yet to come out with a slogan. In fact, it hasn't launched its campaign yet. So we don't know exactly what they're going to be doing. In 2012, they had a song, I believe it's by Daddy Lumba also, Nanaya Wena.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That was a bit catchy. What do you think they need to do to counter this JM Twaso that the NDC is campaigning on?
Right. So elections are about narratives, and at the end of the day, they have to convince Ghanaians why GM should not Twaso and why they should come. And so they also have to come up with an argument that would counter the necessity for Mahama to continue. In the last elections, the Nanaya winner, it was catchy, but you see, the thing about slogans is that it cannot just float like that. It has to be built on something.
Right.
So in 2000, Kufuor campaigned on positive change. So it was not just change, the change was qualified. And there were several versions of it. Wamachakemi, Mukwabani Mukwaya Keke, that's all. I remember that happened in 2000.
Right.
And so the argument was that the NDC had been there for way too long. And so there was the necessity for other people to participate in the political space. So it was more of a political argument that they made. And so it is not just saying change, but change for what?
And I believe that is the argument, that if you work in the communications unit of the MPP, that is going to be your challenge to make sure that you come up with a message to counteract the Kutwaso.
All right, thank you very much. That's Dr. Eche Sekanko. He's a lecturer at the Department of Communications at the University of Ghana. And that's how we wrap up the show. This is the Election Brief. I'm Arba Kumsin. Join us same time tomorrow.